Happiness under pressure. How to build an unshakable inner fortress. You're sitting in your car. Engine off. Hands frozen on the steering wheel. 19 minutes now. You haven't moved. You're staring at the building in front of you. Maybe it's your office. Maybe it's your own home. And something inside you just refuses. It's not laziness. You know what laziness feels like. This is different. This is the weight of 1,000 invisible expectations pressing down on your chest. This is knowing that the moment you open that door, you stop being a person and start being a function. A provider, a problem solver, a punching bag for everyone else's emergencies. Your phone buzzes. You don't look. You already know. Someone needs something. Someone always needs something. And in that silence, in that sacred pocket of stillness between the life you just escaped and the life waiting to devour you, a question surfaces. The same question that haunts you at 2 a.m. The same question you've been avoiding for years. When does it finally get easier? I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. It doesn't. It doesn't get easier. Not after the promotion. Not after the wedding. Not after the kids grow up. Not after you pay off the house. Not after retirement. The chaos doesn't end. It shape-shifts. The anxiety of your 20s becomes the overwhelm of your 30s. The overwhelm of your 30s becomes the existential weight of your 40s. The questions change, but the storm? The storm is permanent, and I know that sounds like the most depressing thing you've ever heard. But here's what nobody tells you, and this is the part that changes everything. The storm doesn't stop, but you can become the kind of person who dances in the rain. Some people thrive in chaos. Not because they're lucky. Not because their problems are smaller. Not because they were born with some magical optimism gene. They thrive because they learned something most people die without discovering. Happiness is not a destination you arrive at when life calms down. Happiness is a skill you build while life continues to burn around you. And today, I'm going to teach you how. The great lie. The destination that doesn't exist. We've been programmed since birth to believe in a finish line. Get the grades. Get the degree. Get the job. Get the relationship. Get the house. Get the promotion. Get the security. And somewhere along that path, somewhere between achievement number 7 and achievement number 12, peace will arrive at your doorstep like a long-awaited package. You've worked hard enough, life will finally say. Rest now. You've earned it. I believed this lie for 30 years. I chased. I achieved. I checked boxes. And every single time I reached what I thought was the destination, I discovered the same horrible truth. There was no peace there. Just another mountain to climb. But here's what broke my brain, and rebuilt it. Researchers have been studying human happiness for decades. They've tracked thousands of people across years, across cultures, across circumstances. And one finding appears so consistently it might as well be carved in stone. Your external circumstances explain only about 10% of your happiness. 10%. That means 90% of whether you feel fulfilled, peaceful, and alive has almost nothing to do with whether you got the job. Nothing to do with whether your relationship is perfect. Nothing to do with your bank account or your house or your car. So what determines the other 90%? Roughly half is genetic temperament, your baseline emotional set point. But the other 40%, almost half of your entire experience of being alive, comes from voluntary activities. From choices, from daily practices, from how you think, how you interpret, how you respond to what happens to you. You have been searching for happiness in the 10%. The treasure was always in the 40%. The exhaustion equation. Why you're tired in your soul. Let's talk about a specific kind of tired. Not the tiredness that sleep fixes. Not the tiredness that a vacation cures. I'm talking about that bone-deep, soul-level exhaustion where you wake up after 8 hours and your first thought is, I can't do this again. Where did this come from? Why does existing feel so heavy? The book reveals the source, and it hit me like a truck. You are exhausted from trying to control the uncontrollable. Think about where your mental energy goes each day. You try to control what your boss thinks of you. You try to control how your partner feels. You try to control whether your kids make good choices. You try to control the outcome of projects that depend on dozens of variables you can't influence. You try to control the economy, the news, the future. You are trying to hold the ocean in your hands. And every drop that slips through your fingers feels like failure. The book introduces an ancient concept that neuroscience has now validated: the 2 arrows. The first arrow is the circumstance. The bad news, the rejection, the failure, the loss. This arrow hits you. It hurts. That is pain. The second arrow is your resistance to the circumstance. The hours of rumination. The why me? The replaying of conversations. The catastrophizing about what comes next. The desperate wish that reality was different than it is. Here's the brutal math. The first arrow, the actual problem, typically causes about 10% of your suffering. The second arrow, your reaction to the problem, causes the other 90%. You are shooting yourself with the second arrow over and over and over. And you're calling it being responsible. You're calling it caring. You're calling it thinking things through. It's none of those things. It's self-inflicted torture. The framework for escape is called the 3 zones. Master this, and you'll save years of wasted energy. Zone 1. Control. This zone is tiny, almost embarrassingly small. It contains your actions, your words, your immediate choices, where you direct your attention. That's it. That's the entire list. You control almost nothing. Zone 2. Influence. This is larger but still limited. Things you can affect but not determine. You can influence your reputation, but not control it. You can influence your team's performance, but not guarantee it. You can influence your children's values, but not force them. Zone 3. Acceptance. This zone is vast. The weather, the economy, other people's thoughts, other people's choices, the past, death, the laws of physics, the decisions your company makes, the political climate. You have zero control here. None. And yet, this is where most people spend 90% of their mental energy. They try to force Zone 3 items into Zone 1. They exhaust themselves pushing against immovable walls. A healthcare worker during a crisis learned this lesson under the most extreme pressure imaginable. 12-hour shifts, impossible decisions, life and death every hour. She developed a practice that saved her sanity. Every day, walking from her car to the hospital, she would say 3 sentences. I will give my complete attention to each patient I see. This is in my control. I will speak to my colleagues with respect, even when I'm exhausted. This is in my control. I will not carry home what I cannot change. This is my boundary. Everything else, hospital policies, staffing decisions, outcomes she couldn't determine, she released. Not because she didn't care. Because she understood that carrying weight you cannot put down is not dedication. It's destruction. Your brain is not your friend, the survival machine that's killing your peace. Here's something that will either disturb you deeply or relieve you completely. Your brain was not designed to make you happy. Your brain was designed to keep you alive. And these 2 goals are often in direct conflict. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your ancestors on an ancient savanna. 2 types of humans walking through tall grass. The first type heard a rustle in the grass, assumed it was probably just the wind, and kept walking. The second type heard the same rustle, assumed it was a predator, and ran. Which type survived to pass on their genes? The paranoid ones. The anxious ones. The ones who saw threats everywhere, even when there were none. The relaxed ones got eaten. You are descended from thousands of generations of worriers. This is why your brain has what neuroscientists call a negativity bias. Your brain is roughly 5 times more sensitive to negative information than positive information. 1 criticism erases 20 compliments. 1 failure overshadows 100 successes. 1 bad moment can ruin an entire day. This isn't a character flaw. This is survival programming. But here's the problem. You don't live on a savanna anymore. The predator is now an email from your boss. The threat is a critical comment on social media. The danger is an awkward pause in a conversation. Your brain cannot distinguish between a tiger in the grass and a passive-aggressive text message. Both trigger the same ancient alarm systems. Both flood your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Both narrow your focus and accelerate your heart and prepare you to fight or flee. But you can't punch an email. You can't run from your own thoughts. So the stress hormones just circulate for hours, sometimes days, keeping you in a state of chronic, low-grade emergency. And then you wonder why you can't relax. The RISE framework, your operating system for chaos. The book presents a framework that has genuinely changed how I navigate pressure. It's called RISE. R. Regulate your nervous system. I. Interpret events through useful lenses. S. Select small actions with compound power. E. Expand into meaning and connection. Let me take you through each level. R. Regulate. Calm the body before you trust the mind. Here's a rule that took me decades to learn. Never trust your thoughts when your body is dysregulated. When you're sleep deprived, hungry, overstimulated, or running on stress hormones, your brain doesn't interpret reality accurately. It distorts everything. It magnifies threats. It turns neutral faces into judgment. It transforms small problems into catastrophes. Then you blame yourself for overthinking or being too sensitive. But the problem was never your thoughts. The problem was your physiology. A stressed body produces stressed thoughts. Always. The sequence most people try: think your way to feeling better. The sequence that actually works: feel your way to thinking better. Body first, mind second. The 90-second reset. This is used by surgeons, pilots, hostage negotiators, anyone who must perform under extreme pressure. When you feel the stress spike, don't try to think your way out. You can't. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, literally goes offline when threat signals are high. Instead, place one hand on your chest, one hand on your abdomen. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 2 seconds. Exhale through your mouth for 6 to 8 seconds. Repeat for 90 seconds. Why the long exhale? Because the inhale activates your sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal. The exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the brake. By extending the exhale, you are literally forcing your body to downshift. It takes 90 seconds. The problem doesn't disappear. The deadline is still there. The difficult conversation still awaits. But now you can actually think clearly about how to handle it. Calm first, then decide. The sensory anchor. Anxiety lives in the future. What if this happens? Regret lives in the past. Why did I do that? Your body only exists in the present. When you're spiraling, anchor yourself to sensory reality. Name 5 things you can see. Name 4 things you can feel. Name 3 things you can hear. Name 2 things you can smell. Name 1 thing you can taste. This isn't mindfulness fluff. This is neurological intervention. You're forcing your brain to process immediate sensory data, which pulls resources away from the worry circuits. It sounds too simple to work. It works anyway. The 3 pillars of regulation. Sleep. This is non-negotiable. When sleep drops, emotional reactivity skyrockets. If your life feels darker than it used to, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What has happened to my sleep?" Movement. Stress prepares your body for action. If you never act physically, the stress hormones stay trapped in your system as tension, agitation, restlessness. Even 10 minutes of walking completes the stress cycle and allows your body to reset. Breath. The fastest lever you can pull anywhere, anytime, without anyone noticing. 4 counts in. Hold for 2. 6 counts out. 6 rounds. If you learn only one tool from this entire video, learn this. I interpret the story that creates your suffering. Let me describe a moment that reveals everything. You send a text to a friend. You see they've read it. Silence. 1 hour passes. Then 2. What happens in your mind? They're upset with me. I said something wrong. They don't actually want to be my friend. By hour 3, you've constructed an entire narrative about how this relationship is falling apart. You're rehearsing the confrontation. You're already grieving the friendship. Then your phone buzzes. "Sorry, was driving and then my kid had a meltdown." What's up? Everything you suffered for those 3 hours was fiction. The event was neutral. They didn't reply. The story was yours. They don't care about me. The suffering was entirely self-generated. Events don't create emotions. Events plus interpretations equals emotions. The same event can produce completely different emotional experiences depending on the story you attach to it. Rain on your wedding day. If you interpret it as, "The universe is against me," you feel devastated. If you interpret it as, "This is what we'll laugh about for years," you feel bonded. Getting fired. If you interpret it as, "I'm a failure and my career is over," you spiral into depression. If you interpret it as, "The universe just redirected me towards something better," you feel liberated. The circumstances are identical. The experience is completely different. You are not upset by what happens. You are upset by your story about what happens. The 3 distortions that steal your peace. Mind reading. You assume you know what others are thinking, and you always assume it's negative. Your boss didn't smile at you this morning? She's planning to fire you. Your partner was quiet at dinner? They're falling out of love. The truth. You have no idea what's happening in other people's heads. Their behavior usually has nothing to do with you. They're lost in their own problems, their own stories, their own fears. Catastrophizing. You take a small problem and spin it into complete disaster. One mistake at work becomes, "I'll get fired," lose my apartment, never find another job, end up homeless. The antidote. What is actually happening right now? Not what might happen. What is happening? Labeling. You take one behavior and make it your identity. I failed the test becomes, I am a failure. I made a mistake becomes, I am incompetent. I got rejected becomes, I am unlovable. But you are not your worst moment. You are not a single event. You are a complex human being capable of growth, change, and redemption. The reinterpretation method. When you notice a strong negative emotion, pause. Ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Then ask, what is one other possible explanation? You don't have to believe the alternative story. You just have to acknowledge that your automatic story is not the only possibility. Maybe your friend didn't reply because they're mad at you. Or maybe they were driving, or sleeping, or dealing with an emergency, or just forgot. The negative interpretation felt certain. Now it's just one option among many. That small crack of doubt is where freedom lives. A story that illustrates everything. James built a business for 3 years. Poured everything into it, then watched it collapse to zero. His first interpretation, I am a failure. I wasted 3 years. I'm a loser who will never succeed at anything. This story produced depression, paralysis, and months of suffering. Then he did the work to reinterpret. New story, I attempted something difficult. External conditions shifted beyond my control. I now have a real-world MBA that taught me lessons no classroom ever could. I'm not a failure. I'm an experienced beginner. Same facts. Completely different story. One leads to giving up. One leads to the next venture. James went on to build a company that made more money than the first one ever would have. The difference wasn't his circumstances. It was his interpretation. Failure is data, not identity. Select the smallest action that changes everything. Here's the biggest lie about getting things done. You think the sequence is inspiration, right pointing arrow, motivation, right pointing arrow, action. You wait to feel inspired. You wait to feel motivated. Then you act. This is why you wait forever. The actual sequence is action, right pointing arrow, inspiration, right pointing arrow, motivation. You don't think your way into a new way of acting. You act your way into a new way of thinking. Motivation is not the cause of action. Motivation is the result of action. The problem with big goals. You look at your to-do list, write the report. Your brain registers this as a threat. It's too big, too vague, too much effort. So you procrastinate. You check your phone. You make another cup of coffee. You reorganize your desk. 3 hours later, the report remains unwritten. And now you have guilt layered on top of the original resistance. The solution is counterintuitive. Make the task so small your brain doesn't recognize it as a threat. Don't commit to writing the report. Commit to opening the document. Don't commit to going to the gym. Commit to putting on your shoes. Don't commit to cleaning the house. Commit to washing one dish. Elena's story. Elena was deep in depression. Couldn't get off the couch. The advice, go exercise, was useless. It was impossibly large. So she made a different deal with herself. I just have to put on my sneakers. She put on her sneakers. And thought, well, I might as well step outside. She stepped outside. And thought, I'll just walk to the corner. She walked to the corner. And thought, I'll just go a little further. 20 minutes later, she had completed a walk that would have felt impossible if she tried to commit to it from the couch. The secret. You don't have to commit to the destination. You just have to commit to the first step. The 1% rule. If you improve by just 1% each day, how much better are you after a year? Not 365% better. 37 times better. That's the mathematics of compounding. Tiny actions feel insignificant in the moment. But they accumulate into transformations that feel like magic. The person who writes 200 words a day has a book in a year. The person who walks 10 minutes a day is in a different body in a year. The person who practices one difficult conversation a week is in a different relationship in a year. Small is not a compromise. Small is the strategy. Environment design. Make good choices automatic. You have a limited supply of willpower. Every decision depletes it. Stop relying on willpower. Start relying on design. Want to stop scrolling your phone in the morning? Don't rely on discipline. Put the phone in another room overnight. Want to eat healthier? Don't rely on resisting temptation. Don't keep junk food in the house. Want to exercise more? Sleep in your workout clothes. Put your shoes by the door. Decrease friction for the behaviors you want. Increase friction for the behaviors you don't. The goal is to make the right choice the easy choice. To make the good habit the path of least resistance. This isn't cheating. This is intelligence. Expand. The meaning that makes struggle worthwhile. The final pillar is the deepest. Here's what the book states clearly, and it contradicts everything modern culture tells us. Happiness, defined as feeling good, is a terrible goal. Why? Because feelings are weather. They change by the hour. If your goal is to always feel sunny, you're going to be devastated every time it rains. And it rains often. The alternative: chase meaning instead of mood. Meaning is different from feeling good. Meaning can exist inside pain. Meaning can coexist with struggle. Raising children is deeply meaningful, and frequently exhausting, frustrating, and thankless. Building something important is deeply meaningful, and often stressful, uncertain, and lonely. Having difficult conversations with people you love is deeply meaningful, and usually uncomfortable. If you only want to feel good, you will quit everything worthwhile. Viktor Frankl's discovery. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps. He lost his wife, his parents, his brother. He experienced horrors that would break most humans. And yet he survived. More than survived, he emerged with insights that have helped millions. What he observed in the camps. The people who survived weren't necessarily the strongest. They weren't the healthiest. They weren't the luckiest. They were the ones who had a reason to survive. A purpose waiting for them. Something that made the suffering meaningful. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Pain versus suffering. This distinction changed my life. Pain is inevitable. You will experience loss, rejection, failure, physical discomfort, emotional wounds. This is the contract of being alive. Suffering is optional. Suffering is what we add through resistance. Through the why me? Through the wish that reality was different. Through the stories we tell ourselves about what the pain means. Pain is, my back hurts. Suffering is, my back hurts, which means I'm getting old, and I'll never be able to hike again, and I'll end up alone and forgotten. Pain is, I lost my job. Suffering is, I lost my job, which proves I'm worthless, and I'll never recover, and my life is ruined. You can't always control the pain. You can always influence the suffering. The tombstone test. When you're spiraling about something, a deadline, a conflict, an embarrassment, try this. Fast forward to the end of your life. You're looking back at everything that happened. Will this thing matter? Will you even remember it? In 5 years? In 10? On your deathbed? Usually, the answer is no. The thing that feels all-consuming right now will be a footnote. If it's remembered at all. But what will matter? How you treated people, the character you built, the moments you were brave, the love you gave, the growth you pursued. Zoom out, way out, then decide how much energy this thing actually deserves. The Personal Charter. The book suggests writing a document that answers one question. Who am I when I'm tired? Anyone can be patient when they're rested. Anyone can be kind when everything's going well. Anyone can be principled when it's easy. Who are you when it's hard? Write it down. Make it specific. I am the kind of person who pauses before reacting in anger. I am the kind of person who tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. I am the kind of person who keeps commitments, even when I don't feel like it. I am the kind of person who shows up, especially when showing up is hard. When your identity is rooted in values rather than outcomes, you become anti-fragile. You can lose the job and still know who you are. You can face rejection and still know your worth. External circumstances will break external identities. Values-based identity survives everything. The modern enemies: rumination, comparison, and the boundary crisis. Let me address 3 specific threats that are destroying resilience in our generation. Enemy number 1. Rumination, the hamster wheel disguised as thinking. You know this trap. You've lived in it. It's 2 a.m. You're replaying a conversation from 6 hours ago. Analyzing what you should have said. Imagining what they're thinking. Constructing worst-case scenarios. It feels productive. It feels like you're processing. You're not. Thinking has a destination. Rumination is a loop. Signs you're ruminating instead of thinking. You've had this exact thought before, yesterday, last week, for months. The more you think, the worse you feel. You're generating questions, not answers. Time disappears without progress. Your body is tense and your breathing is shallow. Rumination is your brain's attempt to solve the unsolvable, to control the uncontrollable, to find certainty where none exists. The tool, the worry window. Designate 15 to 20 minutes each day as your official worry time. Maybe 5 p.m., When anxious thoughts arise at other times, you say, "Not now. I have an appointment with this worry at 5 p.m. You're not suppressing the worry. You're postponing it. What happens? By 5 p.m., most worries have evaporated. They needed attention in the moment, but they couldn't sustain importance across hours. The space between trigger and worry window allows natural perspective. Enemy number 2, comparison, the thief that robs you before breakfast. Before your feet touch the floor, your hand reaches for your phone. Within seconds, you're exposed to hundreds of highlight reels. Perfect bodies, perfect vacations, perfect relationships, perfect careers. You haven't even gotten out of bed, and you already feel behind. Already feel inadequate. Already feel like you're losing a race you didn't sign up for. Here's what you need to understand. Social media is not a window into real life. It's a highlight reel competing against your behind the scenes. Everyone is showing their best angle, their best moment, their best filter. You're comparing your insecurity to their performance. You're comparing your Wednesday to their highlight reel. You're comparing your inside to their outside. The only comparison that works. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Last month, last year. Are you kinder than you were? More skilled? More aware? Have you learned? Grown? Overcome? This is the only game you can win. And it's the only game that matters. Also, curate ruthlessly. If an account makes you feel worse about yourself, unfollow. That's not being petty. That's protecting your mental environment. Enemy number 3, the boundary void, when yes becomes self-destruction. We're taught that being good means being available. That kindness means always saying yes. That setting limits is selfish. This is a lie that will destroy you. When you never say no, your yes becomes meaningless. It becomes resentment wearing a smile. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors. A wall keeps everyone out. A door lets you choose who comes in. The formula for a boundary. Acknowledge the request. Thank you for thinking of me. State the limit clearly. I don't have capacity for this right now. No over-explaining. I can't is a complete sentence. When you over-explain, you give the other person room to negotiate. To find holes in your reasoning. To guilt you into caving. You don't owe anyone a justification for protecting your peace. My personal take. Where I push back. Here's where I need to be honest with you. I've read a lot of books like this. Most of them leave me cold. They feel like they were written by people who've never had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. People who've never known clinical anxiety or bone-deep depression. But this book hit different. Because it makes a distinction most books miss. The difference between pain and suffering. It acknowledges that pain is real. That life is genuinely hard. That some situations have no good options. But it also shows you where you're adding unnecessary suffering. Where you're shooting the second arrow at yourself. Where you're creating problems inside problems. That said, here's where I push back. The book underemphasizes rest as surrender. I've seen people read books like this and turn self-improvement into another form of self-punishment. They add, be resilient, to their already impossible to-do list. Then beat themselves up when they can't perfectly regulate, interpret, select, and expand every moment. Sometimes the most resilient thing you can do is let yourself fall apart. Not forever, not as a lifestyle, but temporarily, because you're human, and humans break sometimes, and breaking isn't weakness. It's pressure finding its release. So I'd add a 5th element to rise. Rest. Not rest as a productivity hack. Rest as acknowledgement that you are not a machine. Rest as permission to be unoptimized sometimes. The goal isn't to build an unbreakable self. It's to build a self that knows when to be strong and when to surrender. Both are strength. The 30-DAY Transformation Protocol. Let me give you a map. Week 1. Regulate. Morning ritual. Water before coffee. 10 slow breaths before checking your phone. 1 intention for the day. The tool. 90-second breathing reset whenever stress spikes. The rule. Do not trust your thoughts when your body is tense. Calm first. Think second. Week 2. Interpret. The practice. Catch yourself when something goes wrong. Ask, what story am I telling myself? The tool. Is this definitely true? Find 3 alternative explanations. The goal. Separate facts from fiction. Create space between event and reaction. Week 3. Select. The practice. The minimum effective step. When stuck. What's the smallest action I can take right now? The rule. Action creates motivation. Not the other way around. Week 4. Expand. The practice. The tombstone test. Zoom out. The tool. Write your personal charter. Who are you when you're tired? The goal: connect your daily struggles to your deepest values. The truth about storms. Let me leave you with this. You came here hoping I'd tell you how to make the storm stop. I can't. Nobody can. The storm is permanent. The chaos is the feature, not the bug. Life is not a problem to be solved but a condition to be navigated. But you can become a master sailor. Every difficult moment is an opportunity to practice being the person you want to become. Every time you choose patience when triggered, discipline when tired, kindness when hurt, you're literally building a new version of yourself. Your brain rewires itself based on repeated experience. The behaviors you practice become automatic. The responses you repeat become reflexive. Your current habits are building your future self right now, whether you're conscious of it or not. The question is simple. Will you participate deliberately in this process? Or will you leave it to chance? Let me take you back to that parking lot. To the person gripping the steering wheel. She learned what you just learned. Did her life get simpler? No. The boss is still demanding. The kids still need her. The messages still buzz. But she changed. She stopped trying to control the uncontrollable. She learned to breathe before reacting. She stopped calling herself a failure when things went wrong. She found pockets of peace inside the war. She realized that happiness isn't something that arrives when the storm ends. Happiness is the skill of sailing. And you can sail. You are stronger than you think. More resilient than you know. More capable than you've ever given yourself credit for. The life you want isn't waiting at some future destination. The life you want is built in how you handle today. Now I need to hear from you. Which of the 4 pillars of Rise do you struggle with most? Is it regulating when stress hits? Interpreting the stories your mind tells? Selecting action when you're exhausted? Expanding into meaning when everything feels pointless? Drop your answer below. Let's talk about it. And if this changed something in you, if even one idea hit differently, subscribe. Because every week, we go deep on ideas that don't just inform you. They transform you. The storm won't stop, but today, you learn to sail.